Hey, this is one of those stories that are not one of the more uplifting ones, but it's part of my life, and I'm going to tell it. The title says I lived with a spaceman and pedophile. Well, I need to explain all of that. Obviously, that's a crazy title, but I think once you listen to this, you'll understand. If you look at the previous video about Bette Midler, I left home at 14 and I lived with this guy, Steve, and we wound up getting an apartment. He worked in the Continental baths. I was 14, 15 years old and lied that I was 18 or 19. If you asked me in the same day, the same person, I'd probably tell you two different ages. I was 16, 17, 18, 19, depending on what I remembered I told people the last minute, because I knew if I told people I was 14 and I look a lot older, that people wouldn't, get out of here. So I was living with this guy, Steve, and I was a 14-year-old kid, and I did not like, the living situation and all that. Didn't have any money, very poor. I went into Central Park. Little I know I was in the Rambles, which is a cruising area, and some guys following me, and I thought, all right, I'm not here for that right now. I didn't even know it was a cruising area. Anyway, comes up, talks to me, and how old are you? First thing out of his mouth, and I thought, oh boy, yeah, I'm 18. He goes, yeah, you really are, right? And I said, well, anyway, that's my age. He goes, oh, so you want to come back to my place for some hot chocolate and cookies? And he laughed, ha 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 ha, it's a little joke. And I laughed, and we wound up going back to his place and fooled around a little bit. And then in my normal routine afterwards, I would tell my whole life story about how crazy my mother was. I'm living with this guy, Steve, who works at the Continental bath, so has a yellow dress in his closet, which he claims is his sister's, but he's really his, you know what I mean? Of course, so Bob says, well, you can always move in here. It's a one-bedroom tiny apartment, 6 West 71st Street, right up on the top floor. There was a tiny, it was probably a studio with a small bedroom, and you could barely walk around the bed, but yeah, come on, I thought, okay. So Steve disappeared one night to go to work. I packed up all my stuff, and I went from 70th Street to 71st Street, 3 avenues over, rang his doorbell, and basically moved in. Bob was 38 years old, and I was 15. So at that time, there was a popular book called Eric von Daniken, Chariot of the Gods, and the theory was that the aliens built the pyramids, and Bob was also into Star Trek and all that kind of stuff. This is before Star Wars, and he was into Eric von Daniken books and all that, and metaphysics, and I could project myself astrally out of my body and fly around the room, and I could see spirits and ghosts, So as a 14-year-old, I kind of go, yeah. But after a couple of months of this kind of brainwashing, I guess it becomes like the Stockholm Syndrome, where you kind of question, well, is this guy for real or not? So he started doing things like, I want you to go into the bedroom. He built a Heathkit stereo. He was into soldering and taught me how to solder, and that's how I built my first synthesizer. But he built a little stereo. He says, I want you to go into the other room because I have to make a broadcast. And I'm like, broadcast? Because I got to make a broadcast. Don't ask questions. Go in the other room. Go in the bedroom. He closes the door. Says, do not come out. Puts the radio on static in between, the FM radio between stations where there's noise. And he starts talking. And he was doing this once every 3 or 4 days. I said, what are you doing? He says, I'm communicating with my fellow Alpha Centaurians on Alpha Centauri. Now, right now, you're rolling your eyes around and laughing, but as a 14-year-old kid in the beginning, I did the same thing. But after several months of these broadcasts and communications, a young kid doesn't have the mental capacity or the support system of somebody else saying, this guy's crazy. And you start questioning what's going on. He had me and him, we had bags packed and left them under the bed, because when the aliens come, our bags are ready. We could just grab our bags and get on the spaceship and leave this planet. Okay? And it was much easier for me to pack a bag, put it under the the bed than to fight this thing, which I wasn't sure whether it was true or not, because you'd have all kinds of theories that, it's like the flat earth people, you know what I mean? Didn't you know that this, oh yeah, and this and that and this and that. And I got to the point where I had a nervous breakdown because I'm a 14, 15-year-old kid. We had very little money. He worked as a teletype operator. This is before internet. He would send, what equivalent of a fax. It was a teletype. He would send messages overseas from his company to his company's branch. He worked on Wall Street. And he would type out messages, and it would go literally through a cable underneath the ocean and wind up on a terminal in London. This is in the 70s. I got to the point I had a nervous breakdown, and I would lie on the bed and I would shake. I would just start shaking, and he would sit on me, and I couldn't understand what was going on. And I'd hear voices in my head, like echoey voices, and I was really cracking up. And I got so freaked out, I went to a doctor, and he said, "You're in nervous collapse." He said, "How old are you?" And of course I lied. I said, "I'm 19. And he raised an eyebrow, and he said, "Well, whatever it is, tell your parents that you need some B vitamins." He prescribed me some Geritol because it had iron B. He says, "You're malnourished." I'm 6'4" and 145 pounds. You can see my rib cages. I was a 28-inch waist. You know what I mean? We couldn't buy fresh meat, so we'd buy 2 or 3 day old meat from the butcher that he couldn't sell. We lived on liverwurst. Whatever was cheap meat that we could live on, we lived on. And smoked a lot of weed. And I remember How I Met Cherry Vanilla is our manager, Max McGarry, sold weed. And that's a whole other story, How I Met Cherry. But he used to come over and bring weed, and one day he comes over and he goes, "I got this really great new stuff. It really gets you high. It's got something in it called angel dust." Now, I know a lot of people going, "Oh my God." Well, we didn't know it was just like first hit the market. I smoked this stuff. I was tripping so hard, I couldn't take it. I opened the window. I was on the 5th floor, and I looked down, and I remember the street had bent up. And as the cars and the people were walking, they were brushing against my nose, and it bent down again. So instead of the street being 5 floors down like this, it was like that. And I said, "You know what? I got to get out of here. I need to take a step." And thank God, my sense kicked in and said, "Wait a minute, something's wrong here." Otherwise, I would have walked out that window. I'm here today, thank God, because of that. But what I also remember, and I didn't remember it until I started putting this book together, is we used to go on these little trips. And Bob had friends his age. I'm 14. He had other friends that were in their 30s, 40s, and 50s that also happened to have younger, and I'm talking 12, 13, 14-year-old boys as their boyfriends or lovers or neighborhood kids that they fooled around with. And I remember Bob took me to Washington, D.C. We were in a Citroen Maserati because I remember the thing rose and sat down. The guy lived in DuPont Circle, and he was probably like a senator or something. He had a California custom king-size bed, and it was Bob, who was 30, this guy was 50, me, who was 14, and about 3 or 4 other 12, 13, 14-year-old boys. And it's time to get on, have sex while we take Polaroid pictures and trade these things. And he took me to Philadelphia once, and I freaked out. And I said I was going to run out the door. I didn't want to be part of this. And he said if he did, these people, these aliens were out there, and they were going to hunt me down and hurt me. It'd be better for me just to get back in the bedroom and, do with these other boys while they watched and, got off on us doing the thing. I went to Amherst, Massachusetts. There was a school teacher who lived up there. He had to pull, "Don't go near the shades." It was him and like 2 guys, and then Bob and me. And then there was Bob, and I can't remember his last name. He owned a sauna company out in Flushing, Queens, and had a house in Fire Island. And we used to go out to Fire Island. Bob's like, "You're going on a trip." I'm like, "Oh boy, all right, here we go." And we go out to Fire Island, and it would be, like I say, a house full. There would be like 8 or 10 underage boys. Bob, who was like a 50, 60-year-old old man, and my Bob. And we would, run around in our bathing suits or half naked, and they would love it. And then, of course, every night required activities where we're going to have an orgy, but they would sit back and watch, sometimes join in, a lot of Polaroid pictures taken and stuff like that. So I lived with a spaceman who was out of his friggin' mind. So while I was on Fire Island, we used to go dancing at the Monster, which is one of the clubs. There was the Ice Palace in Cherry Grove. Right next to it was called the Meat Rack, where guys used to go in and fool around. And I was dancing at the Monster. It was pretty new. And I remember one day I was dancing on the dance floor, and this kind of heavy-set woman, housewife, was dancing. She came over to dance. You want to dance? This is something you did. You asked people to dance. You know, she knew we were gay, and you know, no pickup situation. Just hey, you want to dance? My husband doesn't want to dance. Okay, great. And we're dancing on the dance floor, and I said, "What do you do?" She goes, "I'm an astrologer." And I thought, okay, astrologer. I said, "Oh, you know about the space people?" She goes, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Oh, Bob talks to the space people." She goes, "How old are you?" And I said, 19. She says, "No, you're not. I have a young son that's your age. You're 14, 13, 14, 15. She says, "Talk to me quickly before he comes over. What is Bob telling you?" I said, "Well, he puts on the radio and he talks to the aliens, and he takes me to parties, you know, in different cities with other guys and their boyfriends." And she said, "How old are their boyfriends?" And I said, "Like my age." And she knew right away that there was something going on. She goes, "Listen, I want you to get away from him tomorrow, disappear, say you're going for a walk, going to the beach." She was in the next community over, Sailor Haven, something like that. She had a boat, and they would live on the boat for a couple of weeks, you know, out at the beach and stuff. And she said, "I want you to come over and tell me everything." And I walked over there, I sat down, I told her the story, and she said, "Listen, your boyfriend, this guy you're living with, is a very sick individual. I want to get you home to your parents." I said, "I don't want to go home to my mother. I have some other stories I'll tell about it. It was very violent. She tried to tie me to a radiator. I mean, crazy things. I don't want to go home." She says, "Trust me, you're safer there than you are with this guy, because one day he's going to blow up and he's going to hurt you." So she called my mother. You know, of course, my mother's been searching for me and wanted me back. So we arranged several weeks, like a week or two later, when I was home on a Saturday, that my mother was going to come at 11 o'clock in the morning, but I shouldn't tell Bob. And in the meantime, could I pack my things or somehow or another get a bag together? And I realized I had a bag under the bed. I didn't have to pack anything, so I was pretty much incognito, right? So around 10:30, 11 o'clock on that Saturday, he's running around the apartment. We had a bird. We had a beautiful a lorikeet, you know, or was it a lovebird or something? And he was playing music or what? I can't remember what he was doing. Doorbell rings, and I said, "I'll get it." He goes, "Who's that?" I said, "I'll get it," and I just buzzed the door. And he goes, "What are you doing? Why are you buzzing somebody into the apartment?" I said, "Don't worry, it's okay. Someone's coming to visit me." "Who's coming to visit you?" Now he suddenly starts freaking out. It could be the cops, you know, or something like that. I said, "It's all good." I opened the door. My mother and my father are standing there. And he goes, "Who's that?" And I said, "That's my parents." And he, "What do you want?" And she says, "We're taking our son back." "You're crazy, and you do crazy things to him, and I'm his guardian now." She goes, "You're his guardian? You have the paperwork?" "Well, I'm going to get the paperwork, and I'm going to adopt him." And I'm listening to this ping pong of a pedophile who's trying to talk my mother down from taking her son back with this, you know, bullshit. Well, she says, "Go grab your bag." My mother said, "Go grab your bag." My father and my mother says, "Go grab your bag." And I go into the bedroom. He takes his fist, he punches it through a hole in the wall, takes the bird, breaks its neck, throws it on the floor, and takes his fist again and smashes it into a giant mirror, and it comes crashing down. My father stepped in. My father was a wimp. He said, "If you come within 3 feet of us, I'm going to effing kill you." And I got my bag and I left. And when I left, heading down the stairs, I mean, furniture went over. I heard kalaboom, kalaboom. I mean, he toppled over everything. But luckily, I got out of that situation. So I had to tell the story of Bob the Spaceman, and I didn't realize until I was researching this book that he was part of a ring of pedophiles. You know, he used to get porn flyers mailed to him in brown paper envelopes, because back in those days, porn was like 8mm things. You'd have a little home projector. There wasn't VHS then, and they would sell you a little reel of a porn thing. And I remember looking at some of them, and there were young boys on those things. So he was part of a network, you know, and pretty heavy stuff, right? So anyway, didn't mean to be a downer, but these are things that happen in my life. I've got some other, I'm trying to do happy stories, and then some of the heavy stories. There's some stuff that happened with my mother. There's the whole Boy George story, my friend dying in his apartment. I had a roommate who died in my arms. It's part of my book, I gotta tell it, but I'm trying to pace the good stuff in between the bad stuff, and I'll probably give you a heads up. Thank you so much for listening. I always look at the comments. Thank you for those, love the support. And if you could subscribe, if I reach 1,000, I do this for free, and I had to buy the camera and the lights and all that. I do this for free. If I reach 1,000 subscribers, YouTube starts to pay me. Not very much, a couple of bucks, but then this thing starts to pay for itself. I'm not in this for the money, but we're about 400 subscribers as of recording this. If we could get it up past 1,000, then I can do these and kind of get paid for something for once in my life. Anyway, like it, subscribe if you haven't, even if you don't want to ever look at it again. It just helps the channel. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm still here.